guys, Ariana here, and I'm super excited to show you how I created these business cards from home, from start to finish. I'm going to be walking you through my design process as well as all the materials I needed and used to basically self-manufacture this at home. Supplies I use include the iPad Pro and the app Procreate, since I am creating and designing my own logo. However, this is technically optional. There are plenty of websites that allow you to use their free business card template and even get creative and use graphics and images that are commercially free to put on your business card. So I will place some of those links in my description box below. I also use a printer, of course, to print out all of my business cards. I have a Canon TS6100 and it is an inkjet printer. I also bought some 100-pound cardstock. I felt that this was the happy medium between the 80 and 120. The 80 is way too thin, and the 120, I read a lot of reviews and a lot of people were saying that it would get stuck on their inkjet printer, and I didn't want to risk that, so I went and got the 100-pound, and it works just fine with my printer, and it is thick enough that it feels like a business card. However, as a personal choice, I do want my business cards to be a little bit thicker, so I may try the 120 and see if my printer is able to take it. If not, the 100-pound is perfect, and I'm definitely going to keep using this for now before I order the 120-pound ones. I also, of course, have a paper trimmer, but you can also use scissors, and I put the laminator as an optional supply to use. Obviously, you would also need laminating pouches with that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the laminator as I go on with the process. My business card design has been in the works for a really long time. I had sketched out this character of a girl with an amethyst crown about a year ago, and I just never went back to the drawing board until about a week ago, which I'm really glad that I held off on this idea. So keep your sketchbooks, guys, because now I feel like I have gained enough skills to be able to pull off the vision that I originally had for her. And she's coming alive, as you can see on your screens, and she's exactly how I envisioned her to be, which I'm really happy about. And if you didn't know why I named my small business Arts and Amethyst, amethyst is my birthstone, and I find myself drawn to a lot of amethyst crystals, so that's the background on that. Another thing that I kept in mind throughout this whole process of creating a design for my business card was that I wanted this to be not just a card where people can have my information, reach out to me, etc., etc. I wanted this to be something that people take and people want to keep. And I learned this idea from a very good friend of mine when she hired me to create a business card design for her. She loved to keep business cards from people that had a really great design, had a really great piece of artwork on it, and she wanted that for herself as well. And so she asked me to create a piece of art, which totally changed my approach to creating, even if it's business related. So I want people to keep this. There's been plenty of times where I've tossed away people's business cards because I got the information down and it was time to just recycle it. But when the business card does have a nice design on it, I do want to keep it. So I do want this to be an art keepsake for people too. Creating this background was actually just something I did on a whim, and I'm so glad I did. I was just doodling around, but it's actually what made my business card really stand out and my character stand out. So I'm really happy that I decided to do that, and It's just so rare for me to love something that I created this much. I'm sure other artists can relate, and we're our own worst critic. So liking something I created for once is such a foreign feeling, but also just really, really nice. This is how I formatted my business cards in the program, and I'm going to show you guys how to set up these guides so that you know exactly where to put your business card, like so. So one thing to keep in mind is that the guides are obviously these blue lines, and you want to make sure that you already have in mind what business card size you want. So if you're going to go with the standard, then you can keep watching how I make my guides, because I base this off the standard 3.5 inch by 2 inch size. So those two numbers are important in setting up your guides, and you'll see why in just a second. So I went ahead and opened up a new letter size because the cardstock I'm going to be printing my business cards on is going to be 8.5 by 11 inches. Let me clear out some of these guides so you can see me start from scratch. So this is what it's going to look like once you pull up a new document on Photoshop. And you want to go ahead and go to View, and you're going to see New Guide or New Guide Layout. New Guide Layout is if you understand guides already in Photoshop and you have a thorough understanding of how guides work. If not, and you were like me, I just started using just a new guide, and I individually put in my guides and figured out along the way how I wanted it to be. So go ahead and hit New Guide. We're going to start with the vertical. Again, we know that the size of the page that we're going to use is 8.5 by 11, and to get it exactly in the middle, you want to have half of that 8.5. Let's start with that side. 4.25. So we go ahead and put 4.25, and that gives you the middle of the paper. So now you have your midpoint. Hit New Guide again, and now I'm going to add a guide in 0.75 and a guide in 7.75. Why? Because from this midline here, we want to go 3.5 to the right and 3.5 to the left. So that makes one business card, two business cards. And you'll see as I keep going and adding the horizontal ones why that helps a lot. So now I go to New Guide again. Now I can switch over to horizontal. So now we'll take care of the 11-inch side. So we want to do half of 11 inches, which is 5.5. That gives you that midpoint there. Now you hit New Guide again, and you want to subtract 2 from that midpoint, from that 5.5. So 5.5 minus 2 is going to be 3.5, and now this is going to make more sense to you. So now I have my 3.5 by 2 inches business card. So now we keep going. We add another guide. Now we do 1.5. Perfect. And from the midpoint now, we want to add 2. So again, the midpoint is 5.5. So now we add 2, 7.5. And now we do 9.5. Now, when I cut it and when I print it, when I put my business cards on both, it prints exactly in the same box. You put a guide at 4.25 vertical, 0.75 vertical, 7.75 vertical. Switch your guide to horizontal, and you want to do 5.5, 3.5, 1.5, 7.5, and 9.5 to get these 8 boxes here. here's a visual guide for you to screenshot. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions about the process, I know that was a little fast, just let me know and I'll explain my process a little bit better, especially if you don't want your business card to be the standard size of the 3.5 by 2 inches. Well, it may come out bigger and you just have to resize it to where it fits here. You may need to zoom in just to make sure it's not like this and that it's directly on the guide. But the guide, again, you'll see how it turns magenta. That means you are well within the guide's limits. You just go ahead and keep copying and pasting. And there you go. So you do the front side, then you do the back side. When you print it out, it's gonna all be within the same parameter. Now that we've printed off one side and we've let it cool off a little, it's time to print out the information on the back side of this. Now this is really crucial that we flip it like so, for my printer at least, so that when it prints it out, one side isn't going to be backwards. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. It's printed off the back side, and now when I flip it, it's on the right side. If you did that incorrectly, one would be flipped over. So now I'm just trimming this. I would even suggest doing test prints with regular printer paper and just using grayscale ink. That way you're not wasting any of your supplies. And then you can figure out how to rotate the paper accordingly to your printer. Now I am laminating my business cards, and I only did one batch of this, and I loved how it looked. It felt sturdy, and it made up for the fact that I didn't get the thickest cardstock possible. However, I did some research and I found out that the laminating pouches that we use are not eco-friendly. So that was a bit disappointing because that was my alternative for not having to get thicker cardstock, especially if my printer won't allow me to print it. But of course not at the expense of our environment. So I decided to just not laminate any more of my business cards. The only thing I will be laminating in the future are my bookmarks that I am working on, because those are things that people will definitely tend to keep, whereas business cards, again, like we mentioned, people tend to toss them. So this is the final look of my business cards. I really loved how they turned out. If you guys end up using this tutorial to make your own, I would love to see how your business cards turn out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe, and feel free to follow me on my social media pages. Till next time, bye!